Clayton Riley from Jacksonville, Florida. This is a little different than all the other questions, but what were the three best books you read last year outside of the investment field? Well, even one will do.
I'll give you. I'll tout a book first that I've read, but that isn't available yet. But it will be in September. The woman who wrote it, I believe, is in the audience, and it's Ben Graham's biography, which will be available in September by Janet Lowe, and I've read it, and I think those of you who are interested in investments for sure will enjoy it. She's done a good job of capturing Ben. One of the books I enjoyed a lot was written also by a shareholder who's not here because he's being sworn in, I believe today or tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, as head of the Voice of America. And that's Jeff Cowan's book, which is on the people versus Clarence Darrow. It's the story of the Clarence Darrow trial for essentially jury bribery in Los Angeles back around 1912 when the McNamara brothers had bombed the LA Times. And it's a fascinating book. Jeff uncovered a lot of information that previous biographies of Darrow didn't have. I think you'd enjoy that. Charlie, again?
Well, I very much enjoyed Connie Bruck's biography, Master of the Game, which was a biography of Steve Ross, who headed Warner and later was co-chairman of Time Warner.
Yeah, a little more than co-chairman.
Yeah, and she's a very insightful writer, and it's a very interesting story. I am rereading a book I really like, which is Van Dorn's biography of Benjamin Franklin, which came out in 1952. And I'd almost forgotten how good a book it was. And that's available in paperback everywhere. And we've never had anybody quite like Franklin in this country. Never again.
He believed in compound interest too, incidentally, as you may remember. He set up those two little funds, one in Philadelphia and one in Boston.
Right.
Yeah, to demonstrate the advantages of compound interest. I think that's the part Charlie's rereading. Zone 2.
Thank you for teaching so much to all of us about business. My name is Mike Assail from New York City. You mentioned earlier that Berkshire's shoe business was great, but that other shoe businesses were not so good. What are the uncertainties of the global brand leaders that Berkshire seems to like? They like Coke and Gillette. The global brand leaders in the shoe business being Nike and Reebok. What are their uncertainties in terms of long-term competitive advantage, business economics, consumer behavior, and the other risk factors that you mentioned in the annual report this year? Thank you.
So you're really asking about the future prospects of Nike and Reebok? Yeah, I don't know that much about those businesses. We do have one person in this audience at least who owns a lot of Reebok, but I'm not expressing a negative view in any way on that. I don't understand that. I don't understand their competitive position and the likelihood of permanence of their competitive position over a 10 or 20-year period, as well as I think I understand the position of Brown and Dexter. That doesn't mean I think that it's inferior. It doesn't mean that I think that we've got better businesses or anything. I think we've got very good businesses, but I haven't done the work. And I'm not sure if I did the work I would understand them. I think they are harder to understand, frankly, and to develop a fix on than our kinds. But they may be easier for other people who just have a better insight into that kind of business. Some businesses are a lot easier to understand than others. And Charlie and I don't like difficult problems. I mean, if something is hard to figure, we'd rather multiply by 3 than by pi. I mean, it's just easier for us. Charlie,
Well, that is such an obvious point. And yet so many people think if they just hire somebody with the appropriate labels, they can do something very difficult. That is one of the most dangerous ideas a human being can have. All kinds of things just intrinsically create problems. The other day I was dealing with a problem and I said, this thing, it's a new building. And I said, this thing has three things I've learned to fear: an architect, a contractor, and a hill. And, and if you go at life like that, I think you at least make fewer mistakes than people who think they can do anything by just hiring somebody with a label.
Excuse me, go ahead, sir.
You don't have to hire out your thinking if you keep it simple.
You don't have to do, we've said this before, but you don't have to do exceptional things to get exceptional results. And some people think that if you jump over a 7-foot bar, that the ribbon they pin on you is going to be worth more money than if you step over a 1-foot bar. And it just isn't true in the investment world at all. So you can do very ordinary things. I mean, what is complicated about this? But, you know, we're $3 billion pre-tax better off than we were a few years ago because of it. There's nothing that I know about that product or its distribution system, its finances, or anything that really hundreds of thousands or millions of people aren't capable of, that they don't already know. They just don't do anything about it. And similarly, if you get into some complicated business, you can get a report that's 1,000 pages thick and you got PhDs working on it, but it doesn't mean anything. You know, what you've got is a report, but you won't understand that business, what it's going to look like in 10 or 15 years. The big thing to do is avoid being wrong.
There's some things that are so intrinsically dangerous. Another of my heroes is Mark Twain, who looked at the promoters of his day and he said, a mine is a hole in the ground owned by a liar. And that's the way I've come to look at projections. I mean, basically, I can remember Warren and I were offered $2 million worth of projections once in the course of buying a business, and the book was this thick. And
for nothing.
And we were given it for nothing, and we wouldn't open it.
You know, we'd almost pay $2 million not to look at it. I mean, it's ridiculous. I do not understand why any buyer of a business looks at a bunch of projections put together by a seller or
his agent.
Or his agent. I mean, you can almost say that it's naive to think that that has any utility whatsoever. We just are not interested. If we don't have some idea ourselves of what we think the future is, to sit there and listen to some other guy who's trying to sell us the business or get a commission on it, tell us what the future is going to be, like I say, it's very naive.
Yeah, and 5 years out.
Yeah. We had a line in the report one time, don't ask the barber whether you need a haircut. And it's quite applicable to projections by sellers of businesses. Zone 3.
Mr. Buffett, Greg Ulrich from Washington, D.C. In the last year, United Airlines and Northwest have resolved some of their financial problems by moving ownership over to the employees. With U.S. Air's current positions, problems, what do you see as occurring with U.S. Air, and do you see any movement toward employee ownership, and how will that affect Berkshire's interest in the company?
Well, U.S. Air has a cost structure which is non-viable in today's airline business. Now, that in an important way involves its labor costs, but it involves other things too. But it certainly involves its labor costs, and they've stated this publicly, and I think, and they are with their unions about it, and they're talking with other people about other parts of their cost structure. And I think you'll just see that what unfolds in the next relatively few months, because there isn't any question that the cost structure is out of line. I think the cost structure could be brought into line, but whether it will be brought into line or not is another question. And looking backwards, the answer is not to get into businesses that need to solve problems like that. But that was a mistake I made, and I think in Seth Schofield, you've got a manager who understands that business extremely well, who probably is in my view anyway, is as well regarded and trusted by people who are going to have to make changes as anyone could be in that position. But that may not be enough. I mean, there's enormous tensions when you need to take hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars out of the cost structure of any business, and when you need cooperative action by various groups, each one of which feels that maybe they're having to give a little more than some other group, and understandably feels that way. That is an enormously tough negotiating job. I think Seth is as well equipped for that as anyone, but I would not want to. I cannot predict the outcome. Charlie?
Well, if I were a union leader, I would give Seth whatever he wants, because he's not the kind of a fellow who would ask for more than he needs. And it's perfectly obvious that's the correct decision on the labor side, but whether the obvious will be done or not is in the lap of the gods.
That's a lot of people with a lot of different motivations, and those are really tough questions. I mean, Charlie and I have been involved with that sort of thing a few times, and frequently it works out, but it's not preordained.